Welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. Mayor Brandon Johnson is pitching a city-owned grocery store. What that could look like.
This crime is cutting across everything, and people are petrified.
A WTTW News exclusive, how local law enforcement is working together to combat carjackings.
Яка знищує Росію.
This is a very small person who is ruining Russia.
And the former president of Ukraine visits Chicago as the current one speaks at the United Nations. And up next, we take you on a ride-along to see how a new task force is working to stop carjackings.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Now to a WTTW News exclusive. The city still faces a crisis despite efforts to crack down on carjackings. The Cook County Sheriff estimates up to 1,600 carjackings will happen this year. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez has details on a multi-agency effort to prevent the crimes. Joanna.
Now, Paris, I have to tell you, the special task force expanded back in 2021. Now, many factors contribute to the rise in carjackings, but one thing I learned going on this ride-along is a drive to stop and find carjackers before the vehicle is used to commit other crimes.
It's a hot summer day in Chicago.
How far?
The carjacking task force is on a mission.
A stolen car, I knew the helicopter was above.
There are eyes in the sky and cameras rolling as Deputy Ro Khan and his team track down a stolen vehicle.
Took us all the way from the south side, flipped around at 95th Street off the 94, went back northbound, got on the Stevenson heading southbound, got off at Damon, and then it's worked its way now to 43rd Street.
The suspects seem to know they're onto them.
You can see where they're moving. Now they're actually moving the ground units into position to try to take these guys into custody.
They navigate the streets, knowing every second counts when trying to catch the driver of a stolen vehicle.
Last we saw them, they ran in between those two cars in the alley and towards that beige umbrella. And I don't know if there's a door right there. They might have made it right into that residence.
Right here, for a second. Chris, jump up in the driver's seat.
We make it to the location where police units surround a stolen Lexus. Only this time, the driver and passengers managed to escape on foot.
The 9th District is going to do the paperwork on the car, recover the car, put it in the record that the offenders went into that specific address, and we'll see what happens from there. They also have to figure out if that vehicle is wanted for other stuff, so now it'll move over to the detectives.
Carjackings are terrifying, dangerous, and can happen anywhere. We got a rare inside look at a task force working to stop it. We start at the Sheriff Command Center, where Deputy Khan, yes, he's a former radio host, works on a crime analytics database tracking patterns of carjackings throughout the city.
We have officers who are investigators, actually, who are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who are looking for hijacked or other felony vehicles involved in shootings, murders, armed robberies, things like that.
According to the Sheriff's Police Carjack Dashboard, nearly 42% of carjackings happen curbside, 31% on the street, and 6% at gas stations. Often criminals ambush a victim on foot.
You had mentioned a lot of it. Yes, it happens downtown, but it happens a lot on the southwest sides.
Far more on the south and west side than it does downtown. I mean, it's really impacting those communities where people can't afford to have their cars stolen.
Put this vest on. Let's go on this mission.
We strap on a bulletproof vest and stop at the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, the 911 center.
This is the room where all the vehicles you're going to hear on the radio tonight are being tracked right out of here.
The Vehicular Hijacking Squad is a team of Illinois State Police, Chicago Police, the Sheriff, and the FBI. Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart has been working to control the problem. Recently, a bill he initiated passed into law to help locate hijacked cars through a program run by automakers.
The legislation in Springfield requires a 24-hour hotline so that when carjacking occurs, we can immediately get tracking going, and we are going to get over most, not all, most of the hurdles that are presently out there now.
Back on the street, Deputy Khan takes us on his next mission.
We're going to the west side where a U-Haul van that's been involved in a bunch of retail thefts.
As the night goes on, the team continues to follow leads.
This is the car now that we're looking at. We're able to get from another police agency that was looking for this particular car. They sent us this picture from a license plate reader.
This time, the driver of the car being tracked is suspected of being involved in a violent crime at the University of Chicago campus.
Okay, our guys are on it. You want to just get behind us?
Without helicopter support, the team depends on camera plate readers to pinpoint the hijacker's path.
You want to go get right there, and I'll get right up here, and we'll see if it passes us.
The vehicle drives right past us, but Deputy Khan decides not to chase the suspect for safety reasons.
We'll see if he flipped around. Obviously, he knows he made us back there. And so now he knows that people are on him. So he took off. And at that 95th Street, there's a lot of that flip around, you know, where they want to go the other way. So if he's heading this way, he'll hit again on the plate reader.
Far right lanes of the express lane still northbound. It's a dark gray Lincoln Aviator.
6 hours into the mission, and they call it a night.
Kind of a slow night for us. You know, we had minimal air support, which it really hurts us when we don't have enough aerial, whether it's a fixed-wing plane or helicopters in the sky. But you know, I mean, we still were able to recover some vehicles that had been stolen, and we have leads on some other vehicles as well. So all in all, it was a fair night.
Last year, the Cook County Sheriff's Office rolled out a program where drivers can register their vehicles in the Sheriff's database. That way, if the driver is a victim of a carjacking, law enforcement can have a faster access to track the car. And Paris, this is one of many strategies to combat this ongoing problem.
You mentioned, Joanna, I think that there's going to be new legislation, or it's already taking effect, where there's going to be a 24-hour hotline that car makers have to provide. When does that exactly go into effect?
So Paris, this is set to start next year, and the reason why they put this in place and pushed this bill to happen was, let's say you're a victim of a carjacking, you don't know your license plate. So law enforcement has to call these automakers, and many times they have to go through all these hurdles because they don't want to give them the license plate, or in other terms, they have to, or the auto company is closed. So this way, a 24-hour hotline, they can have faster access to find the vehicle.
A lot of prongs here to tackle a really big problem in Chicago right now. Joanna Hernandez, nice job. Thanks very much. Back with more Chicago Tonight right after this.
Libraries and post offices are frequently services that are run by local government. Under a new pitch from Mayor Brandon Johnson, the city could also be running a grocery store in its future. Johnson is pitching a city-owned grocery store in an effort to reverse historic disinvestment in food access on the south and west sides. Joining us now with a look at what a publicly owned grocery store might look like are Jennifer Stewart, Senior Program Steward with Grow Greater Englewood, S. Mayumi Grigsby, Chief of Policy for the City of Chicago, and Liz Abuno, owner of 40 Acres Fresh Market. Thanks to the three of you for joining us. Umi, let's start with you. We know that this idea, it's still in its infancy, it's early, but what does the city imagine this could look like? Would there be multiple stores in different parts of the city?
So I think what we want to do is ensure that we have all of the community stakeholders at the table helping us envision what this could look like. So we are open. Our focus is on ensuring that we're increasing food access in historically underserved communities that on the south and west sides that have that are experiencing disparate impact or disparate access to healthy food options right now.
Jennifer, Liz, I want to come to both of you on this. As people who are, pretty involved in this work, what is your reaction to this idea? Jennifer, starting with you.
I think it's an interesting idea to explore. What does it look like for the city to provide infrastructure for us to then be able to come in and put some of the things that we've been working on the ground in place within our communities?
Is this something that the city, a role that the city should start to play?
I think that because of the historic disinvestment, it looks like what can we do from the city space to repair some of that, and how can we create a more expedited pathway for people to be able to then begin to, say like, this is what I'd like to have in my community around food, versus a lot of folks on the ground experience a lot of barriers at the city level and trying to get their things off the ground. So having a space to be able to work within, where we're not asking the city to necessarily run it for us, but just provide pathways for people to be able to have access to those spaces, and to provide some funds towards these types of initiatives. Will be interesting to see how that works.
Liz, same question to you as someone who's involved in this work. What are your thoughts on this idea?
First, I think it's nice to see that the city actually cares about equity in terms of healthy food access, especially commercial healthy food access, not simply pantries or food distributions, but the economic and commercial avenue of food. So that is good. I am a little bit skeptical about what a municipally owned model will look like. I think that the city already has commercial food programs that can be built upon, expanded, and improved, like let's say the City Markets program. 40 Acres Fresh Market is a city contracted vendor for the Austin Town Hall City Market every Thursday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Check us out.
Shameless plug.
Of course. And so I think that there's more that the city can do in getting those markets into other neighborhoods, like let's say North Lawndale that doesn't have one, better funding those markets before we talk about something as complex as grocery retail.
Umi, what is the city looking to as guidance for this? We know that some other cities have gotten this off the ground.
Yeah, so Chicago, I believe, would be the largest city or the first big city to do so. And I just wanted to speak a little bit more about the fact that we're thinking beyond just a grocery store. For us, it is a part of an overall strategy, right, around food retail, around increasing access. We have a food equity council that is made up of community stakeholders, and we hope to lean on them to be able to give that perspective of what it really does look like to increase access and to ensure that the agency and the ownership remains within the community and the wealth remains within the community as well. So I wanted to say that. We are partnering with Economic Security Project, and so the idea is they're providing pro bono technical assistance, but that means that they're not only bringing us the expertise, not only are they going to ensure that we have access to more resources, both at the federal and the state level, but we feel great with the resources and the expertise that we currently have right now, and we're just hoping that we're able to build a large enough table that everyone has access to helping us envision what this looks like.
Jennifer, Inglewood, we know, has gone through the closure of the Whole Foods, the opening of the Save-A-Lot in its place, much to the chagrin of many residents. What has that whole sort of back and forth been like for the community?
I think it has been very disheartening for the community because we are looked at in Inglewood's area as not being as valuable. And so you take something like Whole Foods, which is seen on one end of the spectrum as having lots of different options for different kind of food, access to foods for people with dietary restrictions or organic foods, to go into the other end of the spectrum where you have very heavily processed GMO foods with lots of dyes and sugars and salts. And so kind of felt like a reflection of, well, this is what you deserve, which is totally opposite of how people feel about themselves and what they actually deserve, which is to be valued and have access to healthy food.
Liz, your grocery store has been in the works for years. What are some of the hurdles that you've faced in trying to improve food access in Austin?
So we could really use a building permit, a construction permit. If the building department is listening to this, could you issue our construction permit? So, and that's the thing that developers across the city have been saying, is that the morass that is Chicago's building department is really difficult to navigate. And so that is a holdup. We have been fortunate that the city did award us a Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant, but it's really important that the different city departments are working together to push those smaller neighborhood developers through the process. So DPD has to know what the building department is doing and vice versa. It doesn't work without that. Also, you have to understand that with a lot of our neighborhoods, people have been so used to not wanting or liking the options that are available, that there is a mass exodus of dollars that leave Black communities and go to wealthier, more predominantly white communities that have the amenities that we want. The major grocers are making money off of low income, middle income, high income Black people, regardless of where they live, because we travel to them. What we're saying is we want that in our community, but that's really hard to reverse decades of behavior in a year, 2 years, 6 years. It's a long-term plan, and I think that the people who have the expertise in grocery, know what works, are the people who should be building this. We've built 40 acres I built 40 acres from the ground up. There was no 40 acres. I built the brand, I built the model, and so that expertise lives within me, and the goal is to get that expertise across the community and democratize that so more of us can do what I've done, and then the city can come along as a partner in that. It doesn't necessarily have to be city ownership of that.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Obviously, tons of questions to ask. Sure, we'll be talking about this more down the road. My thanks to Umi Grigsby, Jennifer Stewart, and Liz Abuno for joining us. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back with more Chicago Tonight right after this. And now to some more of today's top stories. Tipped workers in Chicago may be a step closer to getting raises as a compromise plan to phase out the minimum wage for those workers emerges in City Hall. Under the proposal brokered by Mayor Brandon Johnson, all Chicago businesses would be required to pay their workers the same minimum hourly wage, whether or not they earn tips, in 5 years. The original proposal would have eliminated the tipped minimum wage by 2025. This new measure won the backing of restaurant leaders and could be approved by the City Council during its meeting on October 4th. Much more on this story on our website.
Residents who've experienced property damage from this summer's flooding are eligible to have their assessed property value reduced, and county officials are working to make sure residents know how to appeal.
28,000 flooding victims have applied for relief so far in my district, and FEMA has already identified $52 million in damages from the summer's flooding. Thousands of homes and businesses were damaged or destroyed, and we're here today to ensure those property owners understand their rights.
Residents, especially in western suburbs like Berwyn and Cicero, experienced historic flood damage. Board of Review commissioners say residents need to provide a description of the damage, the dates, and any relevant documents like photos or insurance reports, along with the right forms to appeal their property value assessment.
Chicago Public Schools says changes it's making to improve learning for students is working. District CEO Pedro Martinez announces CPS students showed a nearly 6% increase in English language arts on the Illinois Assessment of Readiness results, returning to pre-pandemic levels. Students showed a 2.6% gain in math. Martinez credits smaller class sizes, more teachers and aides, as well as more student mental and physical support with additional nurses, social workers, and counselors.
A big groundbreaking today for you, Chicago Medicine. Hospital and civic leaders came together to kick off construction on the new $815 million Cancer Care and Research Center. It is touted to be the only freestanding facility of its kind in the country, and it's slated to open in 2027. It'll have 90 inpatient and 90 outpatient rooms and will bring together the hospital oncology resources and collaborate with research facilities across the University of Chicago campus.
Use Chicago Medicine making sure that the south and west sides of Chicago are properly served, again, is a clear example of how your love and your treasure is aligned.
Today, President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke before the United Nations, stressing the importance for the West to continue supporting Ukraine's defense against Russia's invasion.
Ukraine to be carved up is the independence of any nation secure.
While Russia is pushing the world to the final war, Ukraine is doing everything to ensure that after Russian aggression, no one in the world will dare to attack any nation.
Also today, Ukraine's former president, Victor Yushchenko, was here in Chicago. Yushchenko is a key figure in Ukraine's movement toward independence and democracy, and Paris Schutz caught up with him this morning at a historic site.
That's right, Brandis. Victor Yushchenko, who served as president from 2005 to 2010 of Ukraine. He was famously pro-Western, pro-democratic, a leader who campaigned against a pro-Russian candidate. And a lot of people remember he was poisoned during his campaign in 2004, most certainly at the hands of the Kremlin. He almost died. Now, after losing that election, there were massive protests in Ukraine called the Orange Revolution. Here they are memorializing that. That election was declared rigged. There was a re-election, and he won that. But he constantly had to contend with the tug of Russian authoritarianism and Vladimir Putin. Here he is appearing before Congress back in that era. Now he's in Chicago for various events. We met up with him at perhaps the ideal place, St. Joseph the Betrothed Ukrainian Catholic Church on the far northwest side. He was with his wife and interpreter, a Chicago native who we interviewed last week named Katerina Yushchenko. Now our meeting comes as Biden and Zelensky delivered those speeches that we heard. I asked Yushchenko whether he fears an erosion of Western support for Ukraine as Russia's war drags on. And now here is his answer interpreted by his wife Katerina.
Every month, every year, we understand what the battle is about, and that it is a battle not just about Ukraine, but a battle against evil. If we want people to have freedom, life, and survival, then I think that all people want to be on the right side of history and will not become tired of our war, but understand the justice of our war.
I also asked Yushchenko to take us into the mind of Vladimir Putin and what he's ultimately after.
Putin has one motive, one thing that motivates him, and that is staying in power.
Він на той світ відправив тисячі, десятки тисяч, сотні тисяч людей, якби досягти своєї мети.
He is willing to kill thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to achieve his goal.
Це маленька людина, яка знищує Росію.
This is a very small person who is ruining Russia.
І приносить смерть десяткам тисяч українців, спонукає мільйони українців виїхати за межі нашої землі.
He's someone who has killed tens of thousands of our Ukrainians and has caused millions to have to leave the country for safety.
Тому єдине, що Путіну вдається, і за що його будуть пам'ятати, це великий автор трагедії.
You know, Putin has only accomplished one thing, and there's only one thing he will be remembered for, and that's to be the creator of great tragedy.
And I asked him about that poisoning while he was campaigning in 2004. I asked when he knew that he had been poisoned and how he was able to stay alive.
Коли я їхав з тієї вечері, яка була організована спецслужбами,
When I left the dinner that was organized by the secret services of our
у
country,
мене, очевидно, з'явився перший сумнів, що я маю дуже тяжкі, дуже великі болі, які я ніколи не переносив. Фізичні болі я маю на увазі.
I realized that I was starting to undergo the type of pain I had never felt before in my life.
А після цього, коли на слідуючий день до мене прийшов голова парламенту України,
And then when I was visited several days later by the head of the Ukrainian parliament,
і сказав моїй дружині, що Якщо ти хочеш, щоб він був живий, вези його у серйозну поліклініку.
And he said, if you want him to live, take him to a good hospital.
От тоді я зрозумів, що діло непросте.
That's when it hit me that not something simple was happening, that something intentional had happened.
Universal consensus that this poisoning was done at the hands of Kremlin, and he did say he does hope for justice one day. You can find more of our conversation on our website.
It's really stunning to hear him talk about what's happened there, Paris.
And stunning to see him in Chicago, too. A sister city of Kyiv, where they live now.
Well, and a good interview. It's good to hear from him. That's our show for this Tuesday night. One programming note, due to some technical issues, some viewers were unable to watch last night's show. You can visit our website to see all or part of that program.
And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. The battle between legal cannabis and the new unregulated so-called Delta 8 cannabis.
And learning traditional Mexican dancing with Ballet Folklorico de Chicago. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.